YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with an updated pre-combine 2-round NFL mock draft. So going through 2 rounds here. A lot of risers since the last mock draft, and there's going to be some changes after the combine, I'd imagine. We'll do a post-combine mock draft. We'll have you updated with winners and losers throughout the entire combine. We have full offseason coverage here. We've been covering free agency, possible trades, and more. So go to our channel, check all that out. Like, subscribe to notifications on Twitter, subs. Get some bonus content, including the 3rd round of this mock draft and more. Follow us on Twitter for live news, rumors, and updates. There's a link pinned in the comments for that, as well as our Discord, which you can now join, and our sponsors, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, and Walk the Mock. I'm rocking the Chiefs chain from GLD Shop. They have all NFL teams and more, some sick jewelry. We have codes. Links pinned in the comments. Check it all out. So here are the first 8 picks, and we know the Bears trading that first overall pick is pretty realistic. I've had a couple scenarios where they trade with the Colts. In this one, I was really deciding between, going with a trade with the Texans. We've seen that recently, a team trading up one spot. The Texans would do that mainly because maybe they fear the Colts might go up. We'll say, use them as an example, division rival, and take the quarterback they want. But the more I'm thinking about it, the more I think it's possible the Bears actually could stay put for multiple reasons. Before I was like, they're going to trade it. Like, it's for sure. And they very well still could. But, first off, the Bears, let's say, they're going to do their homework on all these guys. And let's say they come away with the same thing everyone else has as probably the player that is on the top of most people's boards, and that's Jalin Carter, the defensive tackle from Georgia. If the Bears come away with the same thing, but they really like Carter, like this is a can't-miss guy, we have to have this guy, then that kind of limits to where they could trade back to. Like, you don't want to go back to 4 and the Cardinals take him, because the Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon there, they very well could take Jalin Carter. So that kind of leaves the Bears to trading back one spot, which is a possibility where they can still get Jalin Carter. But other teams might just say, hey, we maybe just could stay put. Like, we don't think the Bears are going to take a quarterback. Who knows? They might. I don't think so. There's some talk about that. But the Texans stay put and take Bryce Young, and the Colts can stay put and take C.J. Stroud because, nobody else maybe would go up. And the Cardinals may stay put and take the best defensive player under Jonathan Gannon. Him taking a defensive player that he really likes, maybe something similar to what they had in Philly over there. So, starting to think that maybe if the Bears really want Carter, they may have to stay put or trade back one spot, and the other teams may just be able to stay put. So in this scenario, I kept the Bears staying put at number 1 and taking Jalin Carter. They could like one of those pass rushers. Maybe they don't like Carter, and then that can kind of give them the freedom to trade back. Just looking at Eberflus's past defenses, where they've thrived. I've noticed, where their value has been to the interior defensive line, and then maybe the linebacker position with Darius Leonard in the past, but he actually hasn't really valued the edge spot, which is weird. And we even seen him come into Chicago, and they've traded away some of those guys, but they could be looking to kind of start it over, start from scratch there. But I believe Carter will be number 1 on their board. So that's what I have. Texans, I have going up Bryce Young. I currently have Stroud as number 1 quarterback, and it depends. I think most teams would take Stroud over Young. I think people would disagree with that, but that's my take. I think more of your prototypical size, and that Georgia game was nuts. And he's got more than just the Georgia game, but that game was insane. Like, some people are going to sit down and watch that and be like, how do we pass on this guy, But Bryce Young is a little more flashy. Obviously, he has all the talent in the world. Just the question is the size. Some of those shorter quarterbacks aren't doing him any favors right now. With getting the ball over the line, a lot of pass deflections, just playing the best ball and with the durability. So, I guess that maybe could be the concern. But the Texans in that style of offense that they're going to run and be somewhat similar to what the 49ers are running, I think they can make Bryce Young work. They're going to value running the football. They're going to value getting him out in space, having him throw on the run. So I think they may prefer Bryce Young, where more teams may prefer C.J. Stroud, but I can see them going C.J. Stroud. I could see a scenario. We'll see what they do in free agency. Maybe they surprise everyone, get a quarterback like a Jimmy Garoppolo, for an example, and they attack a defense in the draft. Possibility. And the Cardinals go Will Anderson, the edge rusher from Alabama. Some talk about Tyree Wilson possibly going here, possibly passing him up. And I honestly could see it just because of fit. You look at Jonathan Gannon, the new coach for the Cardinals. He's going to run his defense, and they could view Wilson as more of a fit. Some teams might view, even though Anderson did a bit of both, lining up on the line with the hand in the dirt, in Alabama, or standing up. Even though he did a little bit of both, I think some teams may just say, this might be a 3-4 guy, So honestly, Wilson might fit that defense a little. That's the problem. A little bit better than Anderson. If it's a lot better, I understand. If it's a little bit better, I think you just go with the best overall player, which I've always been about. So I still think Will Anderson for the Cardinals. He wins with in so many different ways. So does Wilson, but Anderson. I think the difference between Anderson and Wilson, I know Wilson might pop out a little more when it comes to his physicality, but mainly the length on Wilson. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There's some offensive linemen that can't even get their hands on him, and then getting sacks with his length coming around the edge and having to really reach for that quarterback as he's trying to escape. So maybe Wilson stands out a little more than Anderson there, but the biggest difference is the get off, the explosiveness off the ball, which is big for me. A lot of these guys getting sacks, you see they time the snap and they get off perfectly and they're able to get to the quarterback very quickly. Those are the types of guys that are taking over today's NFL, and Anderson is much better than Wilson in that category. So I do have Anderson with the Cardinals still, even though we saw Daniel Jeremiah mention that Wilson and the Cardinals' possibility. And I could see it. A lot of people are ripping him, but I can see it just because of fit. And there's a lot to like about Wilson. But I'm gonna stick Anderson there still. And then the Colts get C.J. Stroud. I'm pretty confident actually that the Colts would prefer Stroud over Bryce Young, just more of your prototypical size quarterback. And he's very good, obviously, as well, and only getting better, So I think the Colts would prefer him. Do they try to trade up and get him? And then people will probably argue that, fitting Steichen's scheme, if you want more of a running quarterback, and I don't know if any team's going to bring Young in to run him a bunch, like a Jalen Hurts, like run him like that, because he's not going to be able to hold up. And he can run, but, is his body going to be able to handle those hits? So, I think they'd be more of a fan of C.J. Stroud, and they actually could stay put at 4 and get him. But sometimes when you have to have a guy, especially a quarterback, you feel like he's a franchise tag changing quarterback, you go up and get him. So I could understand that as well. Seahawks go Tyree Wilson. We know they could be in the market for an edge rusher. Wilson, a freaky dude. The only thing he's missing is the explosive get off, which is an important one. I was saying on Twitter earlier this week, if he had that explosive get off, we would be talking about him as the best player in the entire draft, be the best pass rusher we've seen in a long time. So that's something he could work on. Sometimes I look at him and I think he purposely isn't getting off the ball fast because he's kind of focusing on stopping a run, which he is very, very good at. Maybe he's staying patient. But freaky dude, super long, super physical. The Seahawks would love to have him. I'm kind of sticking with Christian Gonzalez, the first corner off the board. I've kind of been saying this since I've been doing the mocks on 2023, and I know some people kind of get upset with that, but I'm kind of sticking to that. I love the length on Gonzalez. I love he's a lockdown type corner. Teams throwing away from him. There's sometimes you watch it on tape and it just gets boring because you're basically just watching his technique because nobody's just throwing his way because they're afraid to throw his way because he is a playmaker. He can step up, make a play on the ball. He's pretty good in press man, which I like for the Lions. They ran a lot of man coverage last year. If you want a lot of man coverage, you want to press a little bit more. So I do like that a lot for the Lions there. Maybe if you're looking at another corner, a lot of people like Devon Witherspoon. That's a possibility. Another DB, Brian Branch, I think is a possibility here. More of a slot guy that's pretty versatile, very good in man coverage. Raiders go Peter Skoronski. I keep having offensive lineman to the Raiders because they need an offensive lineman. That was pretty bad last year. They need another tackle for sure. They could use another guard as well. Skoronski, I like the idea of him playing right tackle for the Raiders. The top 3 offensive linemen, there's more than just 3, but the top 3 pretty much can go in any order. Skoronski getting the most love right now. Some people are mocking the quarterback to the Raiders. I don't see them going with a rookie. I don't see McDaniels kind of going with the project. Unless they feel like there's a sure thing guy out there they may have to trade up for. I feel like they're going to add a veteran piece, but I'm going to go with Skoronski to the Raiders, kind of lock up that tackle duo there with Colton Miller. And the Falcons go Lukas Van Ness, the edge rusher from Iowa, who's kind of been climbing a little bit. Interesting tape because it's very interesting because he didn't start for Iowa. So you're trying to figure out why. Like usually those guys that don't start, like the pass rushers that don't start, usually it's because they're not very good stopping a run. Usually it's because they're a liability out there when stopping the run. But that wasn't the case here. They even played Van Ness inside sometimes. They actually dominated when he was inside. I do see him off the edge at the next level. A little inconsistent, I guess. He's either like crazy flashy, making monster plays, or yeah, he disappeared a little bit. Maybe that's because he's wasn't starting, and because he kind of needs more experience developing some pass rush moves. It's kind of just, let me use my strength and athleticism and just get off the ball and go, which he does have very good get off, but he has some damn impressive plays too as well. He has the ability to stand up or put his hand in the dirt. I like him for the Falcons. A lot of upside for Van Ness. It's just weird that he hasn't been starting, but freaky dude. Curious to see what he does at the combine there. Next 8 picks, I still have the Panthers with Will Levis. Will Levis is a tricky one because his tape this year was not good. It just inaccurate. The base, the footwork, messy. And sometimes if you fix that, and the quarterbacks end up being really good, you use the rest of their talent, which Levis has, and they end up being very good, but it's pretty sloppy. And the accuracy issues stand out. But if you go back to the tape last year, he was a lot better. He was a lot better last year, and that kind of tells me that the talent is in there. You do worry about a guy. Why does he take a step down? The offensive line was pretty brutal. Play calling wasn't great. He was pretty limited. But you kind of got to go off what he's shown, and he's shown some pretty good talent in 2021. It is just a very risky pick. I think accuracy is the main thing, but could you clean up his footwork, his mechanics, his base, and that could kind of fix that. So it is a risky one. It was a guy that I was, going into this year, I was kind of high on because I remember 2021, and then I watched this year, and I actually watched the tape again from this year. I'm kind of a guy I was moving down, but then I kind of go back and go look at 2021, and I remember yeah, that was pretty good. You could see the upside. Still got to work on the accuracy, and it kind of going back up, but it's a tough one. It's a risky one there at Levis with the Panthers looking for that quarterback of the future. Frank Reich gets to pick that guy. I like Frank Reich as a coach, but he's brought in some guys there in Indianapolis at least where it's like, all right, he can fix this guy, and they'll be pretty good. Looking at Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, and he was unable to do that. So can he kind of fix Levis's problems is the question. He's very young, so it's a little bit of a different situation, but you still question it. Miles Murphy, the pass rusher from Clemson, I think is a really good fit with the Eagles. I guess we'll see who their defensive coordinator is going to be first, but he kind of fits in with the style pass rusher that the Philadelphia Eagles have had. Physical pass rusher. Needs to develop a little bit, more of a collection of moves because it's kind of just get off the ball and go. Let me just use my hands, drive the tackle straight back. But for a 275-pounder, pretty athletic, and he might show at the combine here coming up. Pretty solid stopping and run. I think he's got some upside. I think he's got to come up with more of a plan. I think the plan for him pass rush wise, pre-snap wise, is just let me just go right at the tackle, and he's pretty good doing that. Titans, I've had this quite a bit. Paris Johnson Jr., I like the fit there of the Ohio State offensive lineman. They have the former Ohio State offensive lineman Nicholas Petit-Frere playing right tackle. They could take Johnson Jr. and put him at left tackle, and they need that tackle pretty bad. It was a mess with Dennis Daly last year, and Taylor Lewan was out all year, and they actually, just as expected, they cut him this morning, a couple hours ago, actually. Texans go Devon Witherspoon, the cornerback from Illinois. Very flashy, could come up and hit you. Pretty good in coverage as well. Sometimes, the guys that fly around a bit, sometimes it comes with those guys that they fly around a little too much and they whiff on guys. So I have noticed that. I mean, there's some people kind of going nuts about his highlights and his best plays. But there are some, not a whole lot of them, but there are some negatives that, you sometimes gotta keep them under control a little bit. But yeah, very talented and maybe kind of rare type of corner. I think D'Amico Ryans and the Texans would like him. And then him and Stingley getting paired up. It's kind of a cheap, future elite cornerback duo there with those guys because they're on rookie contracts. So I like the idea of that. I've had this a bit as well. The Jets definitely need another offensive lineman. We'll see if they kind of dive in free agency. But Broderick Jones. And there's some reports about Garrett Bowles possibly on the trading block. I could see the Jets interested in him. But Broderick Jones from Georgia, the combination of his strength, the physicality and the footwork, pretty impressive. This is probably the latest he'll go. But the Patriots I have going, we had Paris Johnson Jr., Ohio State offensive tackle going, who actually used to play guard, so could a team put him at guard? That's why I put O-line with him. But the other tackle, DeJuan Jones, who played right tackle for them, I have him on the rise. because he's a freaky dude. I mean, he had a really good tape, really good season with Ohio State, but a freaky dude, insanely long, and that is a big, important thing when it comes to tackles. Everyone wants to work with the lengthy tackles. You want to be able to get, because, I mean, the pass rushers are getting longer too, more athletic, so you want them to be able to use their length, get their hands on him, so before the edge rushers get their hands on him and keep him away. So I think DeJuan Jones, because of his good tape and just the freaky traits that teams just want to work with, I think he could go a lot earlier than when people have been mocking him. So the Patriots definitely they might be in need of 2 tackles. So here is one with DeJuan Jones, who should be on the rise. Another guy kind of on the rise for me is Nolan Smith, the Georgia pass rusher, former #1 overall recruit. Some NFL teams, scouts, GMs will take a look at things like that. They'll take that seriously. And some teams will just kind of base everything off their tape, what they can be. But the tape is good for Nolan Smith. He did get injured the second half. It was a pec injury second half of the year. And usually guys come back from those things. But Nolan Smith's negative here is that he's pretty undersized. He's pretty thin. He's only going to fit as a 3-4 pass rusher. So if a guy like that gets injured, it's a little bit more of a big deal to these teams than a guy that, doesn't have the thin frame. So he doesn't have that going for him because he's a little thin, needs to put on some size, and he's coming off the injury. But he's talented. If he bulked up a little bit, if he already had a little more size to him, I think we'd be talking about him in the top 5. I mean, this is a former top recruit for a reason. He is very athletic. He's very long. The get off is incredible. You wouldn't know it by his thin frame, but he's very good and very instinctive stopping the run. He gets after the quarterback despite the production. I guess people would say, yeah, the size might be the negative and the sack production might be a negative. I'm going to say not so much on the sack production. You wish he had more of it, obviously. But Georgia, I mean, same thing with Trayvon Walker. And they're a little bit different, obviously. But he didn't have a lot of sack production either. It's the way they run that defense. A lot of sitting back and reading, a lot of dropping back for Nolan Smith. Sometimes somebody else, because that defense was so good, just gets to the quarterback just before him, even though he had a fantastic rep getting after the quarterback. So a lot of upside here. If he can add some size, even more upside. I love the explosiveness off the ball. I like him with the Packers. You have a potential future elite duo in this scenario with Rashawn Gary and Nolan Smith. They still have Preston Smith there. Maybe not for too much longer. Maybe one more year there. I still have Michael Mayer as tight end 1. I know some people are talking about it's a really good class. Some other guys could sneak up there, but Mayer is a tight end that we just do not see every year. I mean, the combination of the physicality and the pass catching ability, the after the catch, was just absolutely dominant for Notre Dame, and teams game plan for him. They knew this is kind of their only option. They got poor quarterback play. They have poor receiver play. So teams, really focused on him, and he was still a problem. He can get separation, and he can catch the contested ones as well. Washington, they have Logan Thomas. He's getting up there in age, had some injuries recently, and then with that Bieniemy offense, and they're really going to value a tight end like this. So, is he as quick as Kelsey? No. Does he have the routes as Kelsey? No, but Mayer is very underrated with his footwork and his routes. He's actually very solid there. But maybe a somewhat Kelsey-type factor. It's possibly the best tight end of all time, so it's hard to actually compare at all. But maybe somewhat of a factor like that for Washington, which is more of a need than people maybe are talking about. So I do like that fit there a lot. And who knows, maybe they go with like a Dalton Kincaid, who we'll talk about in a second, actually. Steelers could go offensive lineman here. I've heard they like Darnell Wright from Tennessee. It's kind of smoke season, so maybe they don't. Maybe they like somebody else. If DeJuan Jones was here, I thought I definitely liked him for the Steelers. But I really like Brian Branch as well. Brian Branch probably should go earlier in this because he's a fantastic ball player, a versatile defensive back. He's played safety and corner. I like him in the slot. He's dominant in the slot, playing man coverage. There's not enough of those guys in the NFL. You need more of them to handle those mismatch guys in the slot, whether it's receiver or a tight end. Steelers, Mike Tomlin, they run a lot of man coverage. Branch fits that very well. They have some free agents in the secondary, whether it's safety or corner. They like the versatile type guys like this, so I thought that made a lot of sense. Lions go Dalton Kincaid, has been getting a lot of love lately. It's an athletic, separating tight end that gets open and pretty good after the catch, big playability, a lot of production. The only downside about this, or I hesitate a little bit with the Lions taking a tight end this early because they traded a great one in T.J. Hawkinson, and then they traded him away for less than a first-round pick to only turn and get a tight end the first. So I guess you can debate, does that make sense? But you got a pretty good one here, and you have 2 first-rounders, and it sounds like he's one on the rise to watch out for. So it's an interesting one here. The Lions' passing game would be better with him in there. The Buccaneers get Anthony Richardson, quarterback from Florida, which people are kind of split on here. The Buccaneers they're giving me vibes that they're going in rebuild mode. We'll see what actually happens. But they could afford to take Richardson and play him or have him duel it out, and maybe sit right away possibly. But I don't know if they have the talent in there to have him sit. But I think he may need to start right away. But yeah, it'd be a good situation, I guess, kind of in the rebuild mode. They'll give him time a little bit. There was a report we talked about on Twitter that some teams have, the teams that are highest on Anthony Richardson have a first-round grade on him. Not really that much of a surprise. And there are some teams that have as low as a fourth-round grade on him. So what that tells me is there probably is teams in between that as well, second and third. But that almost makes me hesitate to put him in the first round. I know there's a lot of people that love Richardson. I mean, there's huge Richardson fans out there that say he's a top 10 player. I'm not taking the mock seriously when I've seen this, but I've seen him in the top 5. First or second quarterback off the board. I don't take that too seriously right now. But the report that there's teams that would have him a first round grade and a fourth round grade almost tells me more likely that he may not go in the first round. And that might surprise people because you say, well, there's people with first round grade on him. But how many teams have a first round grade on him? And how many of those teams are going to take quarterback, need a quarterback? How many of those teams how many other players do they have a first round grade on? Because a lot of these teams are only picking once in the first round. Some teams not. So are they more likely to take Richardson or one of the 18 other guys they have in the first round, grade in the first round, more likely the pool, And it's kind of the same thing with Malik Willis. We heard like a guy like that. I mean, Richardson, more upside, bigger, obviously, or even guys like Ritter and Corral. There was teams that had first-round grades on those guys, but they had a better grade on the guy they got in the first and the second round. They had first-round grades on those guys as well, and they end up sliding for that reason. So that almost tells me, and maybe teams kind of catching on, if this team has a lower grade on him, then what are we missing here? So that news, if it's 100% accurate, isn't the best for Richardson, believe it or not, for the reasons I explained. But I think with the combine coming up here, teams seeing him run around and seeing the release is fantastic on Richardson's arm. So I think teams seeing that, they may bump him up a little bit and just fall in love with the upside. Seahawks get a corner to pair with Tariq Woolen, Kelee Ringo, who people are sleeping on for. I've been saying that for some reason. They weren't like going into the year, but recently people have been sleeping on Kelee Ringo. And I still think he's probably the third corner come off the board here. He's a freaky dude. He's got really good play at Georgia. I think wait to the combine. People won't be sleeping anymore after the combine. So, but I like an elite duo there of Woolen and Ringo, maybe right away. Love the idea of that. The Dolphins did forfeit their first round pick. Chargers go Bijan Robinson, running back Texas, who I think should go earlier in this. I mean, this is a running back that we do not see every year. We haven't seen a running back like this in a long time. I think it's possible, it's realistic that this maybe is the best running back in the NFL next year as a rookie. The Chargers grab him, and they'll value having a running back duo of him and Eckler under Kellen Moore, and they'll be able to run the ball a little bit more, which was kind of a problem last year. So I would love that. He should go earlier in this, but it's hard to try to find a spot to peg a running back here, but this is not only a first round talent, it's a top 10 talent all day. The Ravens get a receiver finally, Jordan Addison, who I think will be the first receiver off the board. Shifty receiver, gets separation. I've seen the comparisons to Lockett. I can see that a little bit there. Good tracking the ball down the field, which is kind of underrated at. So it'd be a good addition for the Baltimore Ravens there. And the Vikings actually went with the receiver as well. Some talk about could they move on from Thielen. If they don't this year, maybe it's next year, very likely. And Justin Jefferson, I've seen receivers get doubled and tripled sometimes, but in a full season, I don't know if I've seen a guy get that as much, and in crucial moments in games too. I mean, the last play of their season in the playoffs, 2 guys on him, a safety over the top. It's just ridiculous. So how to fix that, And they have Thielen was a solid receiver. He took a step down this year, and Osborne's a solid, underrated receiver, but somebody else needed to come up pretty big. How do you fix that? Get a guy that can take those safeties away over the top of Jefferson, a guy that can stretch the damn field, and the poster child of that in this draft class is Jalin Hyatt, a freaky speed guy. He's burned so many guys deep this year. Just look at Alabama game alone against the best of the best out there pretty much. Georgia's the best of the best. But, you can put this guy in a slot. You can put him outside. He played the slot a lot, but he was out there on the numbers because Tennessee's offense was interesting. They just spread the guys out as far out as they can. So the slot receiver was pretty much where NFL guys are on the outside. But he can do both. He can use that raw speed and get open, make the big play. He's pretty good he's sneaky after the catch, actually, too. So this isn't the biggest need for the Vikings, but it would help this offense. It would actually help Justin Jefferson a ton there. So I like the idea of that one. The Vikings fan in me kind of getting excited about something like that, possibly, even though cornerback is just a massive need there, and a lot of other spots on defense. Before the second round, let's go on to our next 8 picks. And again, our Twitter subscribers get bonus content, plus they'll get the third round in kind of text format there of this. Jags go Will McDonald. I like Will McDonald. He's maybe a little bit of a somewhat risky prospect. But the Jags have Trayvon Walker. They have Josh Allen. Josh Allen contract kind of coming to an end soon. Do they re-sign him? He's been a little underwhelming, but has had some big-time flashes. I thought he was... last year I thought he was really good. Not this past year, the year before. He was all right this year. He's a solid pass rusher, but what would they do with him? Walker's a guy that can move around. You can slide him inside. You can drop him back. So they'll value having another pass rusher out there like they did. They had Arden Key out there who will hit free agency and actually could get more money than you think. So they could use another guy here. So here you go. You have a speed rusher on the outside that can actually just play a little bit off ball, could drop back if you need to. But Iowa State played him out of position. That's kind of why he's a little risky, because most of the time his hand was in the dirt on a 3-man front and a 3-man rushing almost over the tackle or even inside the tackle, where he's a little bit of a thin frame. So, whenever he stood up and rushed actually off the edge outside the tackle, he went to work. He looked really, really good. So if you put him in the right spot, full-time, how will he look? I guess that's a question. I'm very confident he'll look pretty good. So I want a 3-14 to draft him, have him stand up, rush the outside. Of course, he could drop back, play off-ball if you need him to as well. And I guess he has experience playing hand in the dirt inside, which I don't know if he'll be doing that in the NFL. But, so a unique type pass rusher with some upside could be better in the NFL here for the Jaguars. Giants go Jackson Smith and Jigba. Ohio State receiver, could put him in the slot. A guy that can get separation, he has really good hands, good body control as well. Just was injured this year, obviously, but we saw, some of him at the end of the year before in that Rose Bowl game, which was ridiculous. The Ohio State receivers are definitely panning out, too. So the Giants get that receiver help. Joey Porter Jr., the cornerback from Penn State, goes to the Cowboys. Long, very physical, almost too physical. Gets a little grabby, could get called for pass. That's the negative. Could get called for pass interference quite a bit in the NFL. But he's so good being sticky in coverage, using that length of physicality, attacking the ball. The Bills get a guard, which they badly need, Osiris Torrance from Florida, possibly the best true guard in the class. The Bengals go Darnell Wright, tackle. Some talk about him playing guard, but I like him at tackle. I think a little underrated. The Bengals would love to have him. Back-to-back Tennessee guys actually have 3 Tennessee guys in the first round. Hendon Hooker, I slid into the first round, the Tennessee quarterback to the Saints, which I've heard some teams have already done extensive work on Hooker, the Saints being one of those teams. I think he's a pro-ready type quarterback. He's got a fantastic arm, very accurate. The downfield ball is fantastic. He's really good at reading the field. He's very athletic too. He knows when to take off. I love that he's a pass first guy that is super athletic, knows when to take off, can get some good yards. Reminds me a little bit of Deshaun Watson. I've kind of been saying that. So I would like him for the Saints. I think it's a guy that actually come in and play right away. And there's a lot of people that don't like him because he's going to be 25 and he's coming off the injury. And the injury's never great, but he's supposed to be good by training camp. And I'm not really too worried about the age thing. I think people that think like that are just so worried about the now, like the 1 year. They don't really care about the future. You got to think about the future Not just the first year, what could the old quarterback do? I think he could still continue to get better. By the time he's in his prime, he's coming out, he's coming off that. He'd probably have that fifth-year option instead of a quarterback when they're in their prime. They're getting this massive second contract mainly, so I think that's a positive there as well. He's just very talented. The tape was fantastic. He had a fantastic year. I don't think the scheme's interesting in Tennessee, the system, but I don't think it was all by mistake. Even going back to, I liked him when he was at Virginia Tech. I was surprised they were kind of mixing and matching quarterbacks, throwing some other guys in there. I was a little surprised by that then. So I would not be surprised if he went in the first round. You get that extra option on your first round guys. So getting that extra option, the quarterback makes sense. Keion White, defensive end from Georgia Tech. I think he'd be a defensive end in either scheme. In this case, 4-3 end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Could use another pass rusher in there. Carl Laptis is an up-and-comer, and Frank Clark's got a weird contract decision they got to make this year, but they could use another one for the future. And they had Carlos Dunlap in there as well. But White, fun to watch because he's a big body guy that can move quicker than normal big body guys. Very productive, could slide inside, could stop the run. The thing with, he's athletic for his size, but is he still, for the pass rushers that kind of fit today's NFL, is he athletic enough? Because some talk about him being earlier. I had him going earlier last time too. Kind of moved him down a little bit for those reasons. And the Eagles go Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think is a first-round talent all day. Fantastic runner, fantastic in space, fantastic pass catcher as well. So the Eagles could be looking to add another running back there. Would be fantastic on Philly. Then we're on to the second round here. Steelers get their tackle here with the first pick in the second round, Anton Harrison, the Oklahoma tackle. But they could be looking to dive into an offense lineman in the first round. Brian Bruzzi slips through. It's a tough one as well. Some injury concern. Wasn't as productive as you thought he may be, but you see the talent, you see the upside, so I could see him going in the first round. But the Texans get a defensive lineman for D'Amico Ryans here. Cardinals badly need a center. They get John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota, who stood out the Senior Bowl, possibly the best center in the class. Colts get another pass rusher, Felix and DK Uzama, the edge rusher from Kansas State, who I recently watched his tape. I like him at 4-3 end, and I a little bit higher on him than I was before. I think he's got some upside there, some good pass rush moves, very physical as well. I had this last time, the Rams taking Steve Avila, the guard from TCU. They definitely need guard help pretty bad. Trenton Simpson, who freaky athletic linebacker, could go in the first round. Seahawks getting that linebacker help. I think I had that last time as well. Big riser for me is Julius Brents, the cornerback from Kansas State. Stood out the Senior Bowl. We got the chance of watching him a little bit more. Super long, very good attacking the ball underneath. Everyone loves Devon Witherspoon because he comes up and hits. Here's another guy, long athletic corner that gets up and hits. So I'm surprised he's not getting talked about more. He's really not getting talked about early second round like this. I wouldn't be surprised if he snuck in a late first, to be honest. So I like Brents a lot. Former Iowa corner going to Kansas State, which I like that too, because Iowa, you learn about NFL zone quite a bit. And then Kansas State, they mixed it up. They actually had a really good defense this year, and there was mixing it up of zone but some man in there. So I like the experience for Brents there, ready for the NFL in my opinion. Panthers go Quentin Johnston, who could go in the first round. A lot to like about him. Big body receiver, faster than you think, good in the open field. Does he get the separation that you want from your receivers? I think maybe more likely early second, but the Panthers pair him with DJ Moore would be pretty fun. Next 8 picks, the Saints go Kalijah Kancey, who could I like him a lot, could go in the first round. Really good tape, freaky dude. He played inside for Pitt. You can move him off the edge. With the Saints, they'll probably play him at 3 technique, but they'll probably move him off the edge sometimes. He doesn't have the proper, build, size, length that you look for, but he gets the job done there. Zay Flowers is another guy I could sneak in the first round. I think he's going to be a really good slot receiver. His quarterback play really let him down. I thought he was getting good separation, home run hitting type guy. He can definitely go in the first round. I mean, he feels like a Chiefs type guy, but do they need another one? But the Titans, who just got rid of they just cut Robert Woods earlier today, could use a guy like that. Browns go Drew Sanders, linebacker from Arkansas. It's an off-ball linebacker that you can blitz a lot, you can move off the edge, but he's good at playing off-ball linebacker, which the Browns could use. I think a guy like Jim Schwartz would like a guy like Drew Sanders. Deion Henley, the linebacker from Washington State, who is a big-time riser for me. He stood out the Senior Bowl, and he was kind of a riser maybe up into the third round after that because he wasn't really talked about at all before that. And then I go in and watch a little bit of tape, and he's fun to watch. Really good at flying to the ball, filling gaps kind of all over the place in a good way. Very solid in coverage, so the Jets could use another linebacker. Some talk about them moving on from Mosley. Deontay Banks, another guy that's getting some buzz, physical corner. Falcons could look to pair a guy like that with A.J. Terrell. Packers get a tight end, Darnell Washington, the big physical tight end that is a pretty good blocker as well, but a freaky target. Be good for the Packers. Patriots get a defensive back, from Texas A&M, Antonio Johnson. Maybe another, we talked about Brian Branch in the first round, another one of those style guys, like a versatile DB that I like best in the slot. Pretty good in man coverage. Johnson's pretty damn good at blitzing as well. Patriots kind of like these types of guys who can move around a bit. And the Commanders get their another corner, Cameron Smith from South Carolina, who's an outside corner, but actually has some pretty good play on the inside as well. There's quite a few defensive backs like that. Next 8 picks, and again, the third round will be on for Twitter subs. Tuli Tuipulotu, the defensive lineman from USC, it got some experience inside and out, and the Lions will look at that, and they kind of can use a body for both of that, and then here you have it here. And a lot of picks for the Lions here. Mozzie Smith, defensive tackle from Michigan. Physical run stopper. Pretty good at just shedding his block and getting after the quarterback in terms of the passing game as well. Not going to get a whole lot of sacks, but could provide the interior pressure for the Steelers. Could kind of be looking for the future here for their interior defensive lineman. Luke Musgrave is a freaky tight end. Freaky athlete. He'll probably show out the combine from Oregon State here. The Buccaneers getting younger at that position as well. Anthony Richardson, Luke Musgrave, pairing those guys together. Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA, got around to the running back tape actually yesterday. Finished that up with the more notable prospects still getting through every position, really. But the Dolphins going running back. Both their running backs are free agents. This kind of feels like a Mike McDaniel type guy. Every down, all-purpose back here. Got, for a bigger guy, he's got a little wiggle to him. Combine's going to be big for him because he's maybe not the speediest guy. What's the 40 time going to look like? But an underrated pass catcher as well. I like the fit with the Dolphins there. Seahawks take Joe Tippmann. They definitely could use a center. They have some free agents. And Tippmann, the center from Wisconsin, one of the better ones in the class. Could definitely see himself getting picked in the second round. Cody Mock, the offensive line from North Dakota State, played some tackle for North Dakota State, but there's a lot of talk about him playing either guard or center. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. Pretty versatile. It's a little risky, though, because he can play all these spots, but how good will he be at his one spot? So it's a little bit of a risky pick, but he's been getting some buzz lately. The Bears kind of can use all of the above. I mean, they could use a center. I'd say a center and a right tackle the most in the offensive line. So that could help. Keion Boutte, receiver from LSU. We saw what he could do last year, not this past season, but so much upside. There's so much talent in him. Maybe some off-the-field concerns, but the Chargers could be looking for another receiver. We'll see what they decide with Keenan Allen. Another receiver, the Lions don't really have a huge need at receiver, but DJ Chark is a free agent. They'll have Jameson Williams step up, but they like using a collection of receivers. And Josh Downs, speed, home run threat type guy, really good footwork. So the Lions could look to add that talented guy in the mix there. And then the last 8 picks, another riser for me, the Jags taking corner DJ Turner from Michigan, which Michigan had a really good corner duo this year. But Turner actually got some reps inside as well, another one of those corners, but really good on the outside, physical, athletic playmaker there for the Jags. And they'll probably move on from Griffin, so adding another corner in there could help. Jack Campbell, the linebacker from Iowa, probably another riser here, good inside linebacker, which technically sound, instinctive. The Giants could use that for sure. Israel Abanikanda, the running back from Pittsburgh, who, again, I watched the running backs a lot yesterday, and this is a guy that I'm a huge fan of. So this is a guy that will be in the conversation for running back 3, 4 for me. So I'm a big fan. I like the vision, the ability to see the hole, hit the hole, and the home run ability after the hole. Very speedy. We should see him show out the combine. Well, I don't know if I expect him to be a crazy number with the 40-yard dash, but plenty fast enough. So he's not, Abanikanda is not, getting talked about enough, I'd say, right now, because especially given the productive season that he had when it comes to just everything, but yards and touchdowns, but the actual tape, he really stands out. Like, I think he's a legit NFL running back, so I'm really surprised you don't hear his name much at all. And the Cowboys, some talk about them moving on from Zeke, perhaps. Tony Pollard, a free agent. They could use the tag on him. He's coming off the injury in that last game they played. They could use another back. They value having the 1-2 punch. So it's a guy that I think could, if they continue to, Kellen Moore's gone, but if they continue to run that offense they've been running, I think Abanikanda is a guy that can fit that very, very well. This is one of my favorite players in the draft. I'm very surprised at the lack of talk about him. The Bills grab Isaiah Foskey, the edge rusher from Notre Dame, who has the ability to stand up or put the hand in the dirt, can fit the Bills scheme. And they have pass rushers to build. I mean, this isn't like we had them getting guard in the first round. I mean, this isn't the second biggest need because they have pass rushers, but they could still use another one because, Von Miller with the injury concern, it's kind of been a thing throughout his career. And then the other guys just solid young guys like Gregory Rousseau, but some of those guys just aren't getting the job done. Then you got to get to the quarterback a little better. And Foskey has that production. He has the all-time record at Notre Dame for sacking a quarterback. Bengals go with Tyler Scott, the receiver from Cincinnati, who's been getting some buzz lately, a home run type guy, gets the separation. Was drafted in that USFL league, which means absolutely nothing. They're just trying to take some sneaky guys here. But I like Scott for the Bengals. And there's been, and some people may say, receiver, the Bengals got the best receivers in football. And some people may say, like the talk that there's been, that, Higgins is going to get traded, our receiver. None of those, that last one's definitely not accurate. I think T. Higgins is going to be sticking around. They're not going to move on from him. But actually in the slot, another Tyler Boyd, who's been fantastic, one of the better slot receivers in football. He's got one more year left in his deal, and that might be the guy that they go, hey, we could probably find a replacement. It's not going to be easy. We could probably find a replacement. We're not going to pay him. We're going to pay Higgins. We're going to pay Chase eventually. So that's where we'll save our money. And Scott, that shifty guy they can kind of gear up for the future here with this pick, makes some sense to me. Derek Hall, the edge rusher from Auburn, which the Panthers are switching to a 3-4. I like Hall as a 3-4 pass rusher to be opposite of Brian Burns, opposite side. Love the get off on Hall. Very athletic, gets after the quarterback. And I do like him. He could go in the late first round. I guess the issue with him is getting off blocks, which some of these guys who I like is 3-4, that's kind of their issue. BJ Ojulari, I tried to squeeze here in the second round. He really struggles getting off some blocks sometimes. I worry about him against NFL tackles, so he could possibly slide further than where people are talking about. There's quite a few guys, Herbig, quite a few guys like that, but Hall is very explosive. Panthers could use a guy like that. Chiefs, grab another interior defensive lineman here, Javon Dexter, who can play nose or D-tackle for Florida, had a really good year. And the Eagles grabbing a cornerback. Bradbury, a free agent, could get him back, could use some depth either way. Tyreek Stevenson is another guy that's really good at coming up and attacking the ball. So, as I start to dive into tape more, things change, guys move up on the list, and I start to realize, the class is better than I thought maybe, because there's some guys that are sliding in, so some guys got to slide out, and there's some really good players still left on the board for the third round, which again, the third round mock will be for Twitter subscribers who get a bunch of bonus content, including free agency stuff there. But follow our Twitter because we're always giving you guys talk about the draft, but live news, rumors, updates as well, very important. Let me know your thoughts on the mock draft. Like, subscribe to notifications on. We have full NFL coverage here. Recent videos covering possible free agency, news, signings, rumors, cuts, trade videos, all things like that. So we got you guys covered. Much appreciated if you can join us for all the content. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.